Chapter 13. And it was when Pharaoh had released the people that Yahuwah did not conduct them by the way of the land of the Philistines, though that was the near one. For Yahuwah said, lest the people be frightened in seeing their brethren, who were killed in war, 200,000 men of strength of the tribe of Ephraim, who took shields and lances and weapons of war, and went down to Gath to carry off the flocks of the Philistines. And because they transgressed against the statute of the word of Yahuwah, and went forth from Mizraim 3 years before the appointed end of their servitude, they were delivered into the hand of the Philistines, who slew them. These are the dry bones which the word of Yahuwah restored to life by the ministry of Yechezkel the prophet in the vale of Dura, but which, if they now saw them, they would be afraid and return into Mizraim. But Yahuwah led the people round by the way of the desert of the sea of Sup, and every one of the sons of Israel, with 5 children, went up from the land of Mizraim. And Moshe carried up the ark in which were the bones of Joseph from out of the Nile, and took them with him, because adjuring he adjured the sons of Israel, saying, Yahuwah will surely remember you, and you shall carry up my bones with you. And they journeyed from Succoth, the place where they had been covered with the clouds of glory, and sojourned in Ethan, which is on the side of the desert. And the glory of the Shekinah of Yahuwah went before them by day in the column of cloud, to lead them in the way, and at night the column of cloud removed behind them, to darken on the pursuers behind them, but to be a column of fire to enlighten them before, that they might go forward by day and by night. The column of the cloud departed not by day, nor the column of fire by night, in leading on before the people. Chapter 14. And Yahuwah spoke to Moshe, saying, Speak to the sons of Israel, that they return back, and encamp before the mouth of Haratha, as they lie, created after the manner of the children of men, male and female, and their eyes open to them. It is the place of Tains, which is between Migdol and the sea, before the idol Zephon, that is left of all the idols of Mizraim. For the Mizraim will say, More excellent is Baal Zephon than all the idols, because it is left and not smitten, and therefore will they come to worship it, and will find that you are encamped nigh unto it, on the border of the sea. And Pharaoh said to Dathan and Abiram, sons of Israel, who had remained in Mizraim, The people of the house of Israel are bewildered in the land. The idol Zephon hath shut them in close upon the desert. And I will strengthen the design of Pharaoh's heart to pursue after them. And I will be glorified upon Pharaoh and upon his host. And the Mizraim shall know that I am Yahuwah. And they did so. And the officers who went with Israel announced that the people had fled, and the heart of Pharaoh and his servants was turned unto evil against the people. And they said, What is this that we have done? For we have released Israel from serving us. And he himself prepared his chariot, and his people led he with him by soft words. And he took 600 choice chariots, and all the chariots of the Mizraim his servants, who were afraid of the word of Yahuwah, lest they should be killed with pestilence, if not with hail, and a 3rd mule, for drawing and following swiftly, he added to each chariot. And Yahuwah hardened the design of the heart of Pharaoh, king of Mizraim, and he pursued after the sons of Israel. But the sons of Israel, going out with a high hand, were stronger than the Mizraim. And the Mizraim followed after them, and came upon them as they were encamped by the sea, gathering of pearls and goodly stones, which the river Pishon had carried from the Garden of Eden into the Gihon, and the Gihon had carried into the Sea of Sup, and the Sea of Sup had cast upon its bank. But all the chariot horses of Pharaoh, and his horsemen, and his host, were coming towards the mouths of Haratha, which are before the idol Zephon. And Pharaoh saw the idol Zephon still preserved, and offered oblations before it. And the children of Israel lifted up their eyes, and beheld, the Mizraim were pursuing them. And they were sorely afraid. And the children of Israel prayed before Yahuwah. But the wicked generation said to Moshe, Because there were no places of burial for us in Mizraim, hast thou led us forth to die in the wilderness? What hast thou done to us in bringing us out of Mizraim? Was as not this the word that we spoke to thee in Mizraim? Let Yahuwah manifest himself over us and judge, saying, Desist from us, and we will serve the Mizraim. For it is better for us to serve the Mizraim than to perish in the desert. 4 parties were made among the sons of Israel on the shore of the weedy sea. One said, Let us go down into the sea. Another said, Let us return into Mizraim. Another said, Let us set against them the line of battle. And another said, Let us raise a cry against them and confound them. Unto the company which said, Let us go down to the sea, spake Moshe, Fear not, stand still, and see the salvation of Yahuwah, which will be wrought for you today. To the company which said, Let us return into Mizraim, Moshe said, You shall not return, for, though you see the Mizraim today, you will see them no more forever. To the company who said, Let us set against them the line of battle, said Moshe, Contend not, for the victory shall be wrought among you from the presence of Yahuwah. And to the company who said, Let us raise a cry against them, Moshe said, Be silent, and give the glory, and praise, and exaltation to your Elohim. And Yahuwah said to Moshe, Why standest thou praying before me? Behold, the prayers of my people have come before thy own. Speak to the sons of Israel, that they go forward. And thou, lift up thy rod, and stretch forth thy hand with it over the sea, and divide it, and the sons of Israel shall go through the midst of the sea upon the ground. For behold, I will harden the design of the heart of the Mizraim, and they will go in after them, and I will be glorified upon Pharaoh and upon all his host, upon his chariots and his horsemen, that the Mizraim may know that I am Yahuwah, when I am glorified upon Pharaoh, upon his chariots and horsemen. And the angel of Yahuwah, who led the way before the host of Israel, went and came behind them, and the column of the cloud went from before and stood behind them, because the Mizraim threw darts and stones at the Israelites, but the cloud intercepted them. And it came between the host of Israel and the host of the Mizraim, a cloud, one half of which was light, and one half darkness. On the one side it darkened upon the Mizraim, and on the other side it shined upon Israel all night, and one host did not attack the other all the night. And Moshe stretched out his hand over the sea with the great and glorious rod which was created at the beginning, and on which were engraven and set forth the great and glorious name, and the 10 signs which had smitten the Mizraim, and the 3 fathers of the world, and the 6 mothers, and the 12 tribes of Jacob. And straightway Yahuwah brought a vehement east wind upon the sea all night, and made the sea dry, and divided the waters into 12 divisions according to the 12 tribes of Jacob. And the children of Israel went through the midst of the sea upon the ground, and the waters were congealed like a wall, 300 miles on the right hand and on their left. And the Mizraim followed and went in after them, all the horses of Pharaoh, and his chariots and horsemen, into the midst of the sea. And it was that, in the morning watch, at the time that the powers on high come to offer praise, Yahuwah looked forth with anger upon the host of the Mizraim from the column of fire, to hurl upon them flakes of fire and hail, and from the column of cloud, and confounded the host of the Mizraim. And he brake the wheels of Pharaoh's carriages, so that they drave them with hardship, and that they went on and left them behind. And the Mizraim said to one another, Let us flee from the people of the house of Israel, for this is the word of Yahuwah, who fought for them in Mizraim. And Yahuwah said to Moshe, Stretch forth thy hand over the sea, that the waters may return upon the Mizraim, upon their chariots, and upon their horsemen. And Moshe stretched out his hand over the sea, and the sea returned at the time of the morning unto its strength, and the Mizraim fled from before its waves. And Yahuwah strengthened the Mizraim in the midst of the sea, that they should not soon die in the midst of it, that they might receive the punishment which had been sent to them. And the waves of the sea returned, and covered the chariots, and the horsemen, and all the host of Pharaoh who had gone in after them into the sea. Not one of them was left. But the sons of Israel walked on the ground in the midst of the sea, and the waters to them were as walls on their right hand and on their left. That day Yahuwah redeemed and saved Israel from the hand of the Mizraim. And Israel saw the Mizraim, dead and not dead, cast upon the shore of the sea. And Israel saw the power of the mighty hand by which Yahuwah had wrought the miracles in Mizraim. And the people feared before Yahuwah, and believed in the name of the word of Yahuwah, and in the prophecies of Moshe his servant. Chapter 15. Behold, then sang Moshe and the sons of Israel this song of praise before Yahuwah, and saying they said, Thanksgiving and praise we bring before Yahuwah Most High, who is glorified above the glorious, and exalted above the exalted, who punisheth by his word whomsoever glorifieth himself before him. Therefore, when Pharaoh the wicked bare himself proudly before Yahuwah, and being uplifted in his heart, followed after the people, the sons of Israel, their horses and their chariots, he threw and buried in the sea of Sup. Yahuwah is mighty, and greatly to be feared over all the world. He spake in his word, and became to me an Elohim of salvation. From their mother's breast, even the children have given signs with their fingers to their fathers, and said this to our Elohim, who nourished us with honey from the rock, and with oil from the stone of clay, at the time when our mothers went forth upon the face of the field to give us birth, and left us there. And he sent an angel who washed us and enwrapped us, and now will we praise him. He is the Elohim of our fathers, and we will exalt him. The sons of Israel said, Yahuwah is a man, making war for us. From generation to generation, he maketh known his power unto the people of the house of Israel. Yahuwah is his name, according to his name, so is his power. His name shall be blessed forever and ever. The chariots of Pharaoh and his host he hath cast into the sea. The goodliest of his young men hath he thrown and drowned in the sea of Sup. The deep covered them over. They went down and are buried in the depths of the sea, and are as silent as a stone. Thy right hand, O Yahuwah, how glorious is it in power. Thy right hand, O Yahuwah, hath cut off the adversaries of thy people who rose against them to do them hurt. And in the plenitude and greatness of thy majesty, thou hast destroyed the walls of the enemies of thy people. Thou wilt pour upon them thy fierce anger. Thou wilt consume them, as the burning fire prevails over the stubble. For by the word from before thee, the waters became heaps. They stood as if bound like skins that confine flowing water, and the depths were congealed in the flood of the great sea. Pharaoh the wicked, the hater and adversary, did say, I will follow after the people of the sons of Israel, and will lay waste their camp on the bank of the sea. I will set war in array against them, and kill them, small and great, despoil them of much spoil, bring them back into great captivity, and divide their substance among my people who make war. And when my soul is satisfied with the blood of their slain, I will sheath my sword, having destroyed them with my right hand. Thou did blow with the wind from before thee, O Yahuwah, and the waves of the sea covered them. They went down and sank as lead in the proud waters. Who is like thee among the exalted Elohim, O Yahuwah? Who is like thee, glorious in holiness, fearful in praises, doing wonders and manifestations for thy people, the house of Israel? The sea spake to the earth, receive thy children. But the earth spake to the sea, receive thy murderers. And the sea was not willing to overwhelm them, and the earth was not willing to swallow them up. The earth was afraid to receive them, lest they should be required from her in the day of the great judgment in the world to come, even as the blood of Habel will be required of her. Whereupon thou, O Yahuwah, didst stretch forth thy right hand, and swearing to the earth, that in the world to come they should not be required of her, and the earth open her mouth and consume them. Thou hast led in thy mercy the people whom thou hast redeemed, and given them the heritage of the mountain of thy sanctuary, the place of the dwelling of thy holy Shekinah. The nations will hear and be afraid. Terror will lay hold upon them, even upon all the pillars of the inhabitants of the Palestinian land. Behold, then will the princes of the Edomah be confounded. The strong ones of Moabah will be seized with fear. Their heart within them will melt away, even all the pillars of the inhabitants of the Canaanite land. Through the power of thy mighty arm, let the terrors of death fall upon them. Let them be silent as stone, till the time when thy people, O Yahuwah, shall have passed the streams of Arnona, till the time when thy people, whom thou did ransom, shall have crossed the dividing current of Jabbokah. Thou wilt bring them in, and plant them on the mountain of thy sanctuary, the place which thou hast provided before the throne of thy glory, the house of thy holy Shekinah, which thou, O Yahuwah, hast prepared, thy sanctuary that with both hands thou hast established. When the people of the house of Israel beheld the signs and manifestations which the Holy One, whose name be praised, had done at the sea of Sup, and the power of his hand, the children of the captives answering said one to another, Come, and let us set the crown of majesty on the head of our Redeemer, who maketh the Passover and passeth not, who changeth and is not changed, whose is the crown of the kingdom, the King of kings in this world, whose too is the kingdom in the world to come, forever and ever. For Pharaoh's horses with his chariots and horsemen went into the sea, and Yahuwah made the waters of the sea to return upon them. But the sons of Israel walked upon the land in the midst of the sea, and there did spring up sweet fountains, and trees yielding food, and verdure and ripe fruits, even on the ground of the sea. And Miriam the prophetess, the sister of Aaron, took a tambourine in her hand, and all the women came out after her, dancing with tambourines and playing on instruments. And Miriam sang to them, Let us give thanks and praise before Yahuwah, for mighty and supremacy are his. Above the proud he is glorified, and above the lofty he is exalted. When the wicked Pharaoh in his pride followed after the people of the sons of Israel, his horses and his chariots did he cast and drown in the sea of Sup. And Moshe made Israel go forward from the sea of Sup, and they went forth in the wilderness of Chalusta, and they journeyed 3 days in the desert, empty of instruction, and found no water. And they came to Marah, but could not drink the waters of Marah, because they were bitter. Therefore he called the name of it Marah. And the people murmured against Moshe, saying, What shall we drink? And he prayed before Yahuwah. And Yahuwah showed him the bitter tree of Ardiphni, and he wrote upon it the great and glorious name, and cast it into the midst of the waters. And the waters were rendered sweet. And there did the word of Yahuwah appoint to him the ordinance of the Sabbath, and the statutes of honoring father and mother, the judgments concerning wounds and bruises, and the punishments wherewith offenders are punished. And there he tried them with the 10th trial, and said, If you will truly hearken to the word of Yahuwah your Elohim, and do that which is right before him, and will listen to his precepts, and keep all his statutes, all those evil things that I laid upon the Mizri, I will not lay upon thee. But if thou wilt transgress against the word of the law, upon thee shall they be sent. If thou convert, I will remove them from thee, for I am Yahuwah thy healer. And they came to Elam, and in Elam were 12 fountains of water, a fountain for each tribe, and 70 palm trees, corresponding with the 70 elders of Israel. And they encamped there by the waters. Chapter 16. And the whole congregation of Israel journeyed from Elam, and came to the desert of Sin, which is between Elam and Sinai, on the 14th day of the month of Ijar, the 2nd month from their going forth from the land of Mizraim. And on that day, the bread which they had brought out of Mizraim was finished, and all the sons of Israel grumbled against Moshe and against Aaron in the desert. And the sons of Israel said to them, Would that we had died by the word of Yahuwah in the land of Mizraim, when we sat by the cisterns of meat, and ate bread and had enough. Why hast thou brought us out into the wilderness to kill all this congregation with hunger? And Yahuwah said to Moshe, Behold, I will cause the bread which hath been laid up for you from the beginning to descend from heaven, and the people shall go out and gather the matter of a day by the day, that I may try them whether they will keep the commandments of my law or not. And on the 6th day they shall prepare what they set before them to eat on the day of the Sabbath, and they shall mix in the houses and communicate in their dwellings, so that by carrying this to that, they may have double that which they gather from day to day. And Moshe and Aaron said to all the sons of Israel, At evening you shall know that Yahuwah hath brought you out free from the land of Mizraim, and in the morning will be revealed to you the glory of the Shekinah of Yahuwah. And we, what are we accounted that you complain against us? And Moshe said, By this you shall know, when Yahuwah prepareth you at evening flesh to eat, and in the morning bread to satisfy, that your complainings wherewith you complain against him are heard before Yahuwah. And we, what are we accounted? Your complaints are not against us, but against the word of Yahuwah. Moshe said to Aaron, Bid all the congregation of the sons of Israel draw nigh before Yahuwah, for your murmuring are heard before him. And it was while Aaron was speaking with all the congregation of Israel that they turned toward the desert, and behold, the glory of the majesty of Yahuwah was revealed in the cloud of glory. And Yahuwah spake to Moshe, saying, Hearing I have heard the murmurings of the son of Israel before me. Speak thou with them, saying, Between the evening suns you shall eat flesh, and in the morning shall you eat bread, and shall know that I am Yahuwah your Elohim. And it came to pass that in the evening the pheasants came up and covered the camp. And in the morning there was a fall of holy dew, prepared as a table round about the camp. And the clouds ascended and caused manna to descend upon the dew. And there was upon the face of the desert a substance in lines, minute as the hoarfrost upon the ground. And the sons of Israel beheld and wondered, and said, A man to his companion, for they knew not what it was. And Moshe said to them, It is the bread which hath been laid up for you from the beginning in the heavens on high, and now Yahuwah will give it to you to eat. This is the word which Yahuwah hath dictated. You are to gather of it, every man according to the number of your souls, every man according to the amount of the number of the persons of his tabernacle are you to take. And the sons of Israel did so, and gathered manna more or less. But when they measured by the homer, nothing remained above the measure of him who had gathered much, and he who had gathered little wanted nothing of the measure. Every man according to the mouth of his eating, so they gathered. And Moshe said to them, Let no man make a reserve of it till the morning. But some of them hearkened not to Moshe. Dathan and Abiram, men of wickedness, did reserve of it till the morning, but it produced worms and putrefied, and Moshe was angry with them. And they gathered from the time of the dawn until the 4th hour of the day, every man according to his eating. But at the 4th hour, when the sun had waxed hot upon it, it liquefied and made streams of water, which flowed away into the great sea. And wild animals that were clean, and cattle came to drink of it. And the sons of Israel hunted and ate them. And it came to pass on the 6th day, they gathered double bread, 2 homers a man. And all the princes of the congregation came and told Moshe. And Moshe said to them, This which Yahuwah hath told you, do. Tomorrow is the rest of the holy Sabbath before Yahuwah. That which is needful to have to bake for tomorrow, bake today. And what is needful to boil for tomorrow, boil today. And all whatever remaineth of that which on eat today lay it up, and it shall be preserved until the morning. And they laid it up until the morning, as Moshe had directed them, and it did not corrupt, and no worms was in it. And Moshe said to them, Eat today, because this is the Sabbath day before Yahuwah. This day you will not find any in the field. 6 days you shall gather, but on the 7th day, which is the Sabbath, no manna will come down. And it was on the 7th day, some of the wicked people went forth to gather manna, but they found none. And Yahuwah said to Moshe, How long will ye refuse to keep my commandments and my laws? Behold, because I have given you the Sabbath, I gave you on the 6th day bread for 2 days. Let every man abide in his place, and not wander from one locality to another, beyond 4 yards, nor let any man go forth to walk beyond 2,000 yards on the 7th day. For the people shall repose on the 7th day. And the house of Israel called the name of it manna, and it was like the seed of coriander, white, and the taste of it like the preparations of honey. And Moshe said, This is the thing which Yahuwah hath commanded, to lay up of it a homer full to keep in your generations, that perverse generations may see the bread which you have eaten in the wilderness, in your coming forth out of the land of Mizraim. And Moshe said to Aaron, Take 1 earthen vase, and put therein a full homera of manna, and lay it up before Yahuwah to be kept until your generations. As Yahuwah commanded Moshe, so did Aaron, laid up before the testimony to be kept. And the children of Israel ate the manna 40 years, until they came to an inhabited land. Manna did they eat 40 days after his death, until they had passed the Jordana, and entered upon the borders of the land of Canaan. And a homera is 1/10 of 3 seahs. Chapter 17. And all the congregation of the sons of Israel journeyed from the desert of Sin by their journeyings according to the word of Yahuwah. And they encamped in Rephidim, a place where their hands were idle in the commandments of the law. And the fountains were dry, and there was no water for the people to drink. And the wicked of the people contended with Moshe, and said, Give us water, that we may drink. And Moshe said to them, Why contend you with me, and why tempt you before Yahuwah? But the people were athirst for water, and the people murmured against Moshe and said, "Why hast thou made us come up out of Mizraim to kill us and our children and our cattle with thirst?" And Moshe prayed before Yahuwah, saying, "What shall I do for this people? Yet a very little, and they will stone me." And Yahuwah said to Moshe, "Pass over before the people, and take with thee some of the elders of Israel, and the rod with which thou didst smite the river, take in thy hand, and go from the face of the murmuring. Behold, I will stand before thee there, on the spot where thou sawest the impress of the foot on Horeb, and thou shalt smite the rock with thy rod, and therefrom shall come forth waters for drinking, and the people shall drink." And Moshe did so before the elders of Israel. And he called the name of that place Temptation and Strife, because there the sons of Israel contended with Moshe, and because they tempted Yahuwah, saying, "Doth the glory of the majesty of Yahuwah truly dwell among us, or not?" And Amalek came from the land of the south, and leaped on that night 1,600 miles. And on account of the disagreement which he had between Esau and Jacob, he came and waged war with Israel in Rephidim, and took and killed some of the men of the house of Dan, for the cloud did not embrace them, because of the strange worship that was among them. And Moshe said to Yahushua, "Choose such men as are strong in the precepts, and victorious in fight, and go under the cloud of glory, and set battle in array against the host of Amalek. Tomorrow I will stand, prepared with fasting with the righteous fathers of the chiefs of the people, and the righteous mothers who are like the hills, with the rod with which the miracles have been wrought before Yahuwah in my hand." And Yahushua did as Moshe had bidden him, to wage war with Amalek. And Moshe and Aaron and Hur went up to the top of the height. And it was, when Moshe lifted up his hands in prayer, that the house of Israel prevailed. And when he rested his hand from praying, that the house of Amalek prevailed. And the hands of Moshe were heavy, because the conflict was prolonged till the morrow. And the deliverance of Israel was not prepared on that day, and he could not hold them up in prayer, on which account he would have afflicted his soul. And they took a stone and placed it under him, and he sat upon it, and Aaron and Hur supported his hand, this the one, and that the other. And his hands were outstretched with firmness in prayer and fasting, until the going down of the sun. And Yahushua shattered Amalek, and cut off the heads of the strong men of his people, by the mouth of the word of Yahuwah, with the slaughter of the sword. And Yahuwah said unto Moshe, "Write this memorial in the book of the elders that were of old, and these words in the hearing of Yahushua, that blotting, I will blot out the memory of Amalek from under the heavens." And Moshe builded an altar, and called the name of it, "The word of Yahuwah is my banner, for the sign which he hath wrought in his place was on my behalf." And he said, "Because the word of Yahuwah hath sworn by the throne of his glory, that he by his word will fight against those of the house of Amalek, and destroy them unto 3 generations, from the generation of this world, from the generation of the Mashiach, and from the generation of the world to come."